Donald Trump is guilty as hell. And all of this has been hiding in plain sight. But now we are finally focused on the fact that Donald Trump's name and activities absolutely appear in the Epstein files. Now, let me just back up and talk first about the breaking news reporting from my dear friend, Allison Gill. You might know her from Mueller, She Wrote. And Allison, in addition to her show, Mother, She Wrote, the fabulous award-winning podcast, as well as The Daily Beans, has launched a Substack. And on her Substack, which I'm going to share with you right now, this weekend, she blew a hole through the latest reporting on Donald Trump's links to Jeff Epstein. Okay, so let me back up and take another sip of coffee. You might remember at the end of last week, Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, so this is U.S. Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois, released a letter indicating that he wrote to the FBI, indicating that he was aware from a whistleblower that Pam Bondi over at the Department of Justice had enlisted 1,000 FBI personnel to comb through these Epstein files. Now, I don't know if these were only paper files, meaning things that had been scanned into the computer to review, or more physical aspects in the file. But let's just start with the presumption, based on the reporting, that we are talking about written files, emails, documents, and the like. So Durbin writes in this letter that he is aware that not only were 1,000 personnel from the FBI, this is a huge number, enlisted to comb through these documents, but that they were asked to specifically flag any mention of Donald Trump. So Durbin wanted an answer to whether that was true. Well, he has not gotten his answer, as far as I know. But Allison Gill, the intrepid independent reporter, put out on social media a call to any of these 1,000 FBI employees to reach out to her. And she, on her profile, she has her Signal account. And so some people reached out to her. And in fact, she published a story this weekend about that. Since she published this is a story I'm going to share with you. Others have corroborated it. So let me bring you to, and by the way, that's one thing that happened. I'm going to bring you to Allison Gill. Another thing that happened is the New York Times conducted an interview with Maria Farmer. Maria Farmer has been in the news previously because she and her sister, Annie, were the very first people to report Jeff Epstein to the local and federal authorities. And they did this in 1996. And I think you know that it wasn't until a decade later that the police did anything. And correspondingly, you should know, it just so happened that Epstein, when the police finally showed up at his house 10 years later, it was right after he and Donald Trump had a dispute over real estate. And it was right then that Donald Trump broke his ties with Jeff. So you have to wonder, did Donald Trump make a special call to the authorities? Why was it that no one paid attention to the very disturbing and explicit stories about both child sex abuse? Annie was, I think, 15 years old, as well as the attempted rape of her sister Maria. So so we knew all all of that before. Believe it or not, that was hiding in plain sight. That's been reported out over the years. Even Look, years ago, even before I believe Donald Trump was elected the first time. But what's new from this weekend is the New York Times conducted another interview with Maria Farmer. And what's new is in this interview, she made clear to the New York Times that she had asked them to look into both Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. So that's new. But what's not new is she'd already talked about Donald Trump's behavior toward her in Jeff Epstein's office. And she talked about this years ago. Now, keep in mind, when Maria Farmer was assaulted by Epstein and also treated really creepily by Donald Trump, she was in her 20s, but her younger sister, or at least 20, but her younger sister was not. And she was raped by, from the reporting, Ghislaine and Epstein, and that's already been reported again. So the new thing from the New York Times over the weekend is that she had attempted not only, and by the way, this was in 96, to get the attention of the FBI about Epstein, but also Trump and Bill Clinton. And then again, when this case reopened, thanks to the reporting by Julie K. Brown, the Miami Herald, and others, when this case reopens against Jeff Epstein in around 2015, I'm sorry, was it 2015? I know he was, I think in 2019, I'm sorry, when he was, when Jeff Epstein, leading up to the 2019 indictment and arrest of Jeff Epstein, Maria Farmer again spoke to FBI because I believe they reached out to her. And once again, she said someone should look into Donald Trump. Again, so that part, the Maria Farmer saying, look at Donald Trump, the fact that that happened, that she communicated that to the FBI, is something new. So those are the two new things that we know about. Now, let me start. And then I've got, of course, I want to give you a heads up today. I am going to share with you, finally, the videotaped affidavit of the woman who goes by the name of Katie Johnson, who said that Donald Trump and Epstein raped her when she was 13. So I want to warn you that that is coming up. Now, I do have some uplifting things waiting for you in the show, including, at last, what in the world? Everyone keeps talking about if we get 3.5% of the population out in protests, that will help us engage in regime change, that Donald Trump will be brought down. Now, that's no guarantee, but I'm just saying this is what people are saying. Well, where does that come from? It comes from a political scientist named Erica Chenoweth, and a colleague who wrote a book about nonviolent civil disobedience. And I've got something for you, a videotape, a TEDx, short TEDx of her explaining this 3.5% threshold, what it means and what it doesn't mean. Plus, of course, some other fun stuff in Crazy Town. So if you want to stay through the hard stuff, I've got some uplifting stuff too. So let me share with you first Allison Gill story. I won't read it all, but I want to give her credit, and I want to be able to share that in the chat. Now, I think that you know that the way Substacks work, you can see this here, is that you can join for free or you can decide to pay. I want to, you can see right here, I have not upgraded to paid because I had quit Substack. And I'm now just a lurker there. So this is Allison Gill's story from yesterday, July 20th. And she begins by, the title is The Epstein Cover-Up at the FBI. And she begins by recounting the letter that Dick Durbin sent to Pam Bondi that we spoke about the FBI having 1,000 personnel going through around 100,000 Epstein-related records, right? And flagging those here that where Donald Trump was mentioned. Okay, so Allison, as I mentioned, put a post up. This was on Saturday, so you can see this. I'm going to try to make this a little bigger for you. Okay. I think you can probably see this. Allison, who has Mueller, she wrote, is her most popular handle. This is a screenshot of Allison's that she took. It's in her article from Twitter. Attention, if you are one of the 1,000 FBI agents who reviewed the Epstein files, feel free to reach out to me via Signal in my bio. I'll keep you anonymous as I have the thousands of current and former federal workers who have sent me tips. Please share this widely. Okay. So in 24 hours, this was like midday California time on Saturday. By Sunday, she had received several messages, she said, even from a former analyst that was assigned to review the files. And here's what she said. She said that it was true that 1,000 personnel in the Information Management Division, as well as the FBI New York field office, were assigned to this task. And this confirms what the whistleblower told Durbin's office. She also confirms that there is a log tracking the mentions of Donald Trump in the files. She says there are approximately 100,000 files and there are roughly 300,000 pages. She said individual analysts were told to flag mentions of Trump by document and page number by logging them in an Excel spreadsheet, and that they would then hand in the spreadsheet they made at the end of their shift. Their shifts were sometimes 24 or 48 hours. And she said, but what's really important here is that the agents were not told to flag Trump until later in a process that began in mid-March. So a little more of that in a second about the mid-March. She said that one of the people she spoke with on the condition of anonymity said that many agents spent more time waiting for new instructions than they did processing files because the instructions changed daily. She said that they had an internal site that did not have the usual restricted permission. So even more than 1,000 people might have been able to get to this. Now, this is the key thing. Regarding the ever-changing nature of the instructions that came from Pam Bondi's team, which one source described as full panic mode. Full panic mode. There were four different instructions that they were given. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing that. The bottom line is there is a master log that is being kept of all mentions of Donald Trump. The other thing to think about is if this review began in mid-March, I'm curious at what point they shifted over to looking for mentions of Donald Trump. One thought, and this is going to segue into Maria Farmer, is that Maria Farmer, the woman who I mentioned, who was the first person to report Jeff Epstein 10 years before anyone did anything about it. She and her sister, right, back in 96. Maria Farmer filed a lawsuit this May against the Department of Justice for not protecting her, against the FBI. So it's possible, but I don't know the dates, that there was a point in time since they were going through these documents anyway to look at these files, as Pam Bondi said she was going to do and release, that due to the litigation against the government, and this is my suspicion, nothing Allison anyone wrote, is it possible that upon getting notice or even a warning that litigation was happening, maybe they were trying to settle first, I don't know, but there was a point sometime on or after May 30th when that was filed that they then decided they better start looking through there and flag that for the purpose of that discovery. I don't know. So now I want to move to Maria Farmer. And I want to make clear, in the thumbnail for today, you see me looking shocked. You see Donald Trump looking angry. In the center, you see a black and white photo. That is a photo of Maria Farmer, although I've put a bar over her eyes. This is something she shared with the New York Times years ago, right? This did not come out just now. However, there is, what I want to share with you now is a story that came out this weekend. Interviewing Maria Farmer, as I told you, this breakthrough, what's new in the New York Times here, is that Maria is saying she told the FBI to also look at Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. And so you may have missed her earlier testimony. So before I share the FBI story with you, I do want to also share with you this video of I thought I had, yes, this is a video of a Jeff Epstein accuser, Maria Farmer, and I want to share this with you. This was in ABC News in 2020. So I'm going to share this screen with you. Keep in mind, 5 years ago, she appeared on ABC. Now, here's when she's talking about what happened to her with Epstein. Then I'm going to jump into yesterday's story at the New York Times. I think you should hear Maria speak for herself. Okay, let me get that screen. Here we go. And
to my knowledge, the first person to ever complain to law enforcement about Jeffrey Epstein was Maria Farmer. She did something, just nobody listened.
I first met Jeffrey Epstein in 1995, so I'm 25 years old. I had just graduated from the New York Academy of Art, and all the students have a show. He went to shake my hand and he said, "You're so talented. I love your painting." This is the painting that Jeffrey Epstein purchased the night I met him.
Maria was initially hired to collect art for Epstein, but that quickly morphs into a role where she's signing in guests in the front entrance of his townhome, which is one of the largest private homes in Manhattan.
In a lawsuit, Farmer alleges that while working there, she started seeing concerning behavior.
Ghislaine Maxwell would go out on these drives to procure models. She would say, "These are the nubiles. I need the nubiles." That was her word. She would bring them to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion. And they were just walked up one at a time. And they had a certain amount of time upstairs, and then they were brought down. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong.
And one night in Epstein's Ohio estate, everything changed when she was called into Epstein's bedroom.
And Jeffrey was lying there on the bed with socks on and boxers. And he goes, "Sit right here." And I thought, oh God.
In a lawsuit, Farmer alleges that Epstein and Maxwell violently sexually assaulted her.
I remember being in a lot of pain. I remember having some bruises. They didn't get my clothes off. They tried. I was in an absolute panic to the point where I was able to get myself up and get out of that room. And Ghislaine came after me, but I literally took these big pieces of furniture and I pushed them against the doors.
After this alleged assault in Ohio, Maria's done with Epstein and Maxwell. She wants nothing more to do with them. But when she gets back to New York, she says she begins to get threatening phone calls from Maxwell. She also claims that both Epstein and Maxwell are harassing her and trying to ruin her art career.
The way I'd been treated made it very clear to me there is something else going on.
Maria files a police report against Jeffrey Epstein, and then Maria calls the FBI.
And I said, "Are you taking me seriously?" And he said, "Yes, I'm taking you seriously." If the FBI had listened to me in 1996, there would have been no more victims.
The path to justice would take decades. Last July, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested and charged with trafficking dozens of underage girls. According to the indictment, from 2002 to 2005, Epstein sexually exploited and abused dozens of minor girls at his homes in Manhattan, New York, and Palm Beach, Florida.
The alleged behavior shocks the conscience.
Or federal agents conducted a raid on his 7-story, $56 million home in Manhattan's Upper East Side. They say they found hundreds, if not thousands, of female nude or partially nude photographs, some of the photos seeming to show underage girls. And inside of a locked safe, compact discs, one allegedly labeled Young Miscellaneous Nudes 1. Epstein, appearing in federal court in a blue jumpsuit, would plead not guilty to one count of sex trafficking.
okay, guys. So this was 5 years ago, right? This was 5 years ago. So now I want to share with you this article from the Times, from Maria Farmer. Okay. And again, she was interviewed by the Times before, but the breaking news part of this New York Times article is that she specifically told the FBI to look into Donald Trump. Now, I want to make clear to you, too, what she said about Donald Trump in here had already been reported. Again, this was hiding in plain sight, and people chose to ignore it. Why? Why? Because we don't care about girls and women. We just don't. There may be people who believe the whole world is controlled by some pedophile ring of powerful men, but the reality is much more mundane, that young girls and women are abused and raped, and even when people are held accountable. Fake news, they say. So let's look at what the Times reported, because it's really, really good. I'm going to back out of this so you can see this. Okay, so here we go. It's called An Accuser's Story Suggests How Trump Might Appear in the Epstein Files, right? And this was published yesterday, the same day Allison Gill's piece was. The subhead is: a former Jeffrey Epstein employee said that she told the FBI in 1996 and 2006. I apologize, it was 2006, not 2019, the second time, about what she considered a troubling encounter with Donald Trump. Above here, the photo you see is a photo from August of 2019. This photo is from the earlier Times story. Okay. So this was written by Mike Baker and Michael Schmidt. Excellent reporters. In case you don't know, not that this is entirely relevant, but Michael Schmidt of the Times happens to be married to Nicole Wallace. Okay. It was the summer of 1996 when Maria Farmer went to law enforcement to complain about Jeffrey Epstein, right? And this is what she said. I'm going to add to this. At the time, she said she had been sexually assaulted by Mr. Epstein and his longtime partner, Ghislaine Maxwell. Ms. Farmer, then in her mid-20s, had also learned about a troubling encounter that her younger sister, then a teenager, had endured at Mr. Epstein's ranch in New Mexico. And she described facing threats from Mr. Epstein. Okay, so she also, though, said that she urged the New York Police Department and the FBI to take a broader look, here I'm going to make this bigger, at the people in Mr. Epstein's orbit, including Donald J. Trump, then still 2 decades from being elected president. She repeated that message, she said, when the FBI interviewed her again about Mr. Epstein in 2006, right? So what the New York Times says, this might be the way in which Trump is mentioned in the files. In interviews over the past week about what she told the authorities, Ms. Farmer said she had no evidence of criminal wrongdoing by Mr. Epstein's associates, but she said she was alarmed by what she saw as Mr. Epstein's pattern of pursuing girls and young women while building friendships with prominent people, including Mr. Trump and President Bill Clinton. Okay, so let me tell you about this story. Remember how she just said that she had been hired to help him procure art? Okay, so the encounter with Mr. Trump, Ms. Farmer said, occurred in 1995 as she was preparing to work for Mr. Epstein. Unexpectedly, Mr. Epstein, I'm sorry, she said she told the authorities that late one night, Mr. Epstein unexpectedly called her to his offices in a luxury building, and she arrived in running shorts. Mr. Trump then arrived. So this is late one night. Mr. Trump then arrived wearing a business suit and started to hover over her, she said she told the authorities. Ms. Farmer said she recalled feeling scared as Mr. Trump stared at her bare legs. Then Mr. Epstein entered the room, and she recalled him saying to Mr. Trump, "No, she's not here for you." The 2 men left the room, and Ms. Farmer said she could hear Mr. Trump commenting that he thought Ms. Farmer was 16 years old. After her encounter with Mr. Trump, Ms. Farmer said she had no other alarming interactions with him and did not see him engage in inappropriate conduct with girls or women. Okay. So that is the part of the story that's new. Fine. Got some more stuff for you. So when I talk about what is hiding in plain sight, I need to share with you, before I get to the disturbing video affidavit, I want to share with you some reporting, and this goes back 7 years ago. 7 years ago to when Donald Trump was already president, about beauty contests speaking out on Trump's behavior. This was from a Houston television station. So again, this was right in front of us, right? Right in front of us. This is from 2018. Let me just do my share screen. Sorry, guys. Here we go.
Donald Trump loves a beauty pageant. And by his own admission, he was no stranger backstage while owning parts of 3 different pageants for nearly 2 decades.
They're standing there with no clue. Is everybody okay? And you see these incredible looking women. And so I sort of get away with things like that.
In 2001, Tasha Dixon was Miss Arizona, competing in the Miss USA pageant. She experienced this kind of awkward moment firsthand.
Our first introduction to him was when we were at the dress rehearsal and half naked changing into our bikinis.
Dixon was 18 at the time and says watching Trump storm into a dressing room was shocking.
To have the owner come waltzing in when we're naked or half naked in a very physically vulnerable position, and then to have the pressure of the people that work for him telling us to go fawn all over him, go walk up to him, talk to him, get his attention. Who do you complain to? He owns the pageant. So there's no one to complain to. Everyone there works for him.
In 2005, 4 years later, Donald Trump bragged to Howard Stern about what he could get away with since he owned the pageants. The conversation uncovered by CNN's K-File.
I'll go backstage before a show. Yes. And everyone's getting dressed and ready and everything else. And, no men are anywhere. And I'm allowed to go in because I'm the owner of the pageant, and therefore I'm inspecting it.
You're like
everything is good.
Later in that same show, Trump is asked if he'd ever had sex with Miss USA or Miss Universe contestants.
Never comment on things like that.
Give us the first letter of the country you had sex with.
How many letters are there?
This comes just weeks after Hillary Clinton brought up Trump's attacks on former Miss Universe Alicia Machado. Trump once described her as Miss Piggy and then told his Twitter followers to find her sex tape.
And what qualifications would you say you have?
And another video where Trump is seen interviewing Playboy playmates.
Okay. Now, she was 18. The other contestants weren't. It's really disgusting. And when you find out that Donald Trump was the owner of a teen beauty pageant, what's that about? Well, the New York Times also has some reporting about not just this beauty pageant, but other ways in which he would position himself as an authority judging the bodies of teen girls, and one instance involving Jeff Epstein. So I want to share this with you too, guys. I'm just sharing the stuff. Again, this is new. This is a piece the Times ran this weekend after the Wall Street Journal seems to be breaking news. I guess the Times also wants to add to it. Remember, the Wall Street Journal last week broke the news about the really lewd letter Donald Trump sent for Jeff Epstein's birthday in, I'm going to say it was 2003. I sometimes say 2002, but I think it was 2003. I want to share this screen with you now. Okay. So here's a piece the Times also ran. And it is inside the long friendship between Donald Trump and Epstein. And here the subhead is, for nearly 15 years, the two men socialized together in Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida, before a falling out that preceded Epstein's first arrest. This is by Ellen Fuhr and Matthew Goldstein from Saturday, okay? And so what I want to do is read you a little bit of this, but not much. After the relationship ruptured, the disgraced financier ended up behind bars, not just once, but 2 times after being accused of engaging in sex with teenage girls. I think I would call that rape because it is. One of the young women who later said Epstein groomed and abused her was recruited into his world while working at a spa as a spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago. And that was, of course, as we've talked about, Virginia Giuffre, the late Virginia Giuffre. Another accuser recalled being eyed by Mr. Trump during a brief encounter in Mr. Epstein's office. and that Mr. Epstein had told him that she's not for you. Remember, that's Maria Farmer. Another woman had said that Mr. Trump groped her when Mr. Epstein brought her to Trump Tower in order to meet him. Okay, so, and then they talk about the Wall Street Journal reporting. Now, here is a picture, of course. You may know that it was Epstein who introduced Donald Trump to Melania. Okay, so let's look at, this is what is, I think, quite disturbing here. Okay, so we've already seen the video of them dancing with cheerleaders, but those are not underage women. Okay, so this person here that you're seeing next to him, this model, Ingrid Senhave, this was her at a Victoria's Secret party in 1997. You see Jeff Epstein on the right. She was 20 years old when Donald Trump was dating her. Prior to that, she had been trafficked or sexually abused when she was a teenager by Epstein, and she has reported that out. Okay, so I'm gonna get rid of this. This is Joe Free. We know that. Okay, we also have Stacey Williams, a model. We've got all this stuff. So some of this stuff has already been reported. What I want to say to you here, though, is about Donald Trump and his participation in these beauty contests. Oh shoot, I'm not finding it here, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop doing that share. But there was some kind of contest that he had, and when the girls, they were girls, teenagers showed up, the only two people judging them were Epstein and Trump. Right, that was it. And I can't quite find that now. So I've got one last thing before I kind of add to this commentary. So this might be a moment to like take a beat, take a deep breath, and decide whether you want to watch this. I think I've read this, and I have not watched this full deposition, or it's not a deposition, it's her affidavit that she filed. So just to be clear, I'm going to be sharing with you something from the David Pakman show that he put up in October of 2013. And this includes this video of Katie Johnson. So when he says at the beginning, David Pakman, that she brought 3 lawsuits, it's because her lawyer brought them in the wrong jurisdictions or with the wrong claims. And then she ultimately brought a proper claim in federal court and, I don't know if she brought a proper claim right before Donald Trump's election, and then dropped it, did not show up at press conferences, and was in fear. Now, it's possible that this is an invented story. There are times when people try to do that. We can think of sort of rat fucker type people who interfere in elections by creating fake stories and exposing people as being gullible. I don't know. But I want to play this for you because this has been around. People have been talking about it in my mention. So let's share this. And again, you can step away if this is uncomfortable for you. So let me share this right now. Again, from the David Pakman show. And I'm sharing with you this video that he included about Katie Johnson. Here we go.
Let's talk about Donald Trump and rape because it's Monday and seems like a good topic. We've been telling you about the Jane Doe who filed 3 federal complaints about Donald Trump, against Donald Trump, for alleged child rape in connection with a party that she attended involving not only Donald Trump, but also Jeffrey Epstein. And this allegedly happened back in 1994. The alleged victim was 13 years old at the time. And we have not learned that much about the victim until now. We now know that the accuser is Katie Johnson. The most recent federal filing includes 3 affidavits, one from Katie Johnson herself, previously known to us as Jane Doe, plus 2 more, an eyewitness named Tiffany Doe and also a Joan Doe, a classmate of Johnson's back from 1994. Now, Johnson's story has been the same this entire time throughout all of these court proceedings. She recalled being approached by Tiffany, who allegedly worked for Jeffrey Epstein at the time. Tiffany invited Katie Johnson, who was then an aspiring model, to an event in Epstein's home to get to know people and maybe get a modeling job. And throughout the summer of 1994, the lawsuit alleges that Johnson endured, quote, savage sexual attacks by both Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. I have video testimony I'm going to play for you. I want to warn you, it is disturbing. You will notice that Johnson's voice has been altered and her face has been blurred. Notwithstanding that, this is disturbing. I am again giving you the opportunity to skip past this or to come back in about a minute and a half. Let's listen to Ms. Johnson here.
Second time that I saw Mr. Trump was same scenario. He was onlooking at an orgy, and Tiffany came over to me and said that Donald Trump had requested that I perform oral sex on him. He came in, and I was basically tied to a bed with pantyhose, and he tied him, and they were so tight it hurt to even lay there. And I tried to say something. It was like, you just shut up, shut up, bitch. This is. It's basically like he was being really, really rough, and I started to get scared, and he was, basically like ripping my clothes off, and I was actually I got freaked out. I just turned into this animal. I was like a completely different person. I couldn't do anything about it. And he ripped off all my clothes, and he started to basically have sex with me, and I was screaming because I'd never had sex before. It was my first time. And
yeah. Appalling and dreadful. Now, of course, Donald Trump has denied Johnson's claims since April. Trump representatives have said that he and Epstein barely even knew each other, but the Daily Beast reports that they were actually regularly seen together during the 1990s. And as I told you last week or the week before, a federal judge in New York has ordered a hearing in December about this case. This
Okay. So, by the way, you can see the complaint if you want to online. The woman who is still going by the pseudonym Katie Johnson has actually been interviewed. That she was wearing, not only was her face blurred, but she was wearing a wig there. Not sure what happened to her. There's some questions, according to reports that I had, that maybe the address or phone number she had in one of the complaints was not hers. Who knows? I mean, that seemed pretty credible to me, the way she paused. But at any rate, that was happening. And before the hearing in December, she dropped the case. Now, was she paid as off? Just like, I shouldn't say paid off. Was she paid for her silence and also a sort of form of protection so she wouldn't be harmed to make this case go away? I don't know. But I just wanted you to know that all of this was out there. All of this was out there. Not to mention also the Hollywood Access tape. So and also his fake university, his cheating workers, even the story about him that his own wife wrote about, that Ivana wrote about, that when he was angry at her, he raped her. So and this was even before we knew about E. Jean Carroll. So these stories have been out there. And it saddens me that it's actually come to this, where there are people saying this is a distraction. Not just people in Trump's camp, but others. I'm very disappointed that Nancy Pelosi is saying that. I'm disappointed in Democrats who are saying that. And it makes me wonder whether they are covering for Bill Clinton. I don't know. But I care about victims. And I think the Me Too movement stops. There's like a glass ceiling, because there are some men for whom immunity applies, and that shouldn't be the case. Now, of course, we've talked about following the money, that there are thousands of financial transactions between, outgoing ones from Jeff Epstein and incoming ones. And if anyone cared to find out who might be engaging, not just in child rape, but in prostitution or in, this is bank fraud. If you say you're paying for one thing and not another, there are plenty of federal crimes, some of which the statute of limitations has run, like on the bank fraud, but on the child sex trafficking, that has not run. So I think that there could be a way, if anyone actually chose to look at these files, to look at that. Now, let me back up and say that you have to remember that back in 2008, when Jeff Epstein first got that sweetheart sentence in the Florida jail, that he somehow, and lawyers around him, arranged for non-prosecution agreements, not just with Epstein regarding that time period leading up to then, but also others. So it's my guess that the reason why many men at that point detached from him is maybe, we don't know who they are, but there are many men who are on that non-prosecution agreement. And we should see that, because I think that was procured in violation of the Victim Protection Act. There's a lot to uncover here, none of which Pam Bondi would be interested in uncovering. And by the way, I also think that Merrick Garland fell down on this as well. But that's that. Now, there we are. Now, Donald Trump thinks this story is going away, and he is flailing like crazy. So he trying to change the subject. Let me tell you the tactics. One, of course, is he is suing the Wall Street Journal for defamation. He's also getting Tulsi Gabbard to threaten to indict and arrest, I guess Barack Obama for claiming the Russia hoax. This is crazy. There's no way that will even, in a logical sense, I could walk through that with you, but it's not going to work, because the Justice Department actually indicted the Internet Research Agency. The reporting of their activities happened after, a lot of this after Trump was elected, and the indictments after Obama was gone. So yeah, I don't think so. The other thing he is doing is he's trying to be racist and think that will attract people's attention, but he's always been this way. He's threatening the Washington Commanders, I think is their name, to change their name back to the Washington Redskins, or he won't let them. I guess, do some kind of merger or get some kind of funding. He then said that his statement was totally blown up in a positive way. Anyway, he's trying to get attention on that. No one's biting. And there's also another thing he's trying to get attention on by, there was reporting in the Wall Street Journal that it was Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, who had to tell Donald Trump not to fire Jerome Powell. And Trump says, I know everything. He's doing everything he can to draw attention away, to pull focus from the Epstein story. And here's the deal. No. It's his 6-month anniversary. He's trying to get people to say, focus on all his accomplishments. First of all, they're not. He lied and said he ended several wars. Tell me which ones. Prices are up. All of this is bad. But nevertheless, we should not pull focus from this. And not because it's bad for Donald Trump, because the man will hopefully be out of office unless we're in a full-on dictatorship in a few years. The reason why the attention has to stay on the Epstein cover-up is because it hurts girls and women, and it allows men to engage in blackmail and secrets. And let me just put it this way. Remember how Tulsi Gabbard had to do this ridiculous claim that she was going to arrest Obama? She did that because Trump was mad at her about her defense of Iran earlier, right? The same thing happens when you have secrets about very powerful people. You don't even have to blackmail them. If they know, you will do their bidding. And there is a very dirty old boys network that needs to be busted. And I don't care who's part of it. Okay. With that, I am now going to shift to some, not to crazy town yet, but to something that's a little bit delightful before I get to Erica Chenoweth's 3.5%. I want to shift to Zohran Mamdani. Now, and also Zohran Mamdani, hold on 1 second. And Omar Fateh. Okay, so was it over the weekend? No, it must have been. I'm trying to think of when it might have been. Omar Fateh, over the weekend has now been nominated or approved by the Democratic Party in Minneapolis to be mayor. I shouldn't say approved, endorsed. And he's a democratic socialist. He was born in the United States. His parents are from Somalia. People are being incredibly racist about him, and as you would not be surprised about. So he's running for mayor of Minneapolis. That happened. Another Democratic socialist, Zohran Mamdani, secured the actual spot as a Democratic nominee on the ticket for New York. He crushed Andrew Cuomo, who has now decided he is going to stay in the race as an independent in the general. He's now threatening threaten us, please. He's now threatening to leave New York for Florida if Mamdani wins. Go for it, Andrew. He's also gave an interview blaming young Jewish voters and Muslim voters or supporters of Palestine who are Muslim or others. So basically, he names not young Jewish voters and blames them for his losing the primary. I find that very anti-Semitic. But let's listen to Zohran Mamdani, very funny ad, as he takes a bit of a vacation to visit his family. Here we go, in Uganda. Here we go.
Politician means listen, not just to your supporters, but your critics too. And some of these critics, especially on a certain website, have been giving me consistent advice. For example, at SamWhite087, Zohran, go back to Uganda, where you come from and belong. At Teflon Gone, loser, go back to Africa. There are thousands like this from across the country. I hear you. And I agree. I'm going back to Uganda. I'm headed there in a personal capacity to celebrate Rama and I's marriage with our family and friends. But I do want to apologize to the haters, because I will be coming back. And since you will undoubtedly read about this trip in the New York Post, inshallah on the front page, here are a few of my humble suggestions for headlines. MIA, Mamdani in Africa. Uganda miss me. He's completely crazy. The Afra can't be serious. Carl Kampala-Neely investigates Mamdani. Zoe running away.
I love it. That's a way to do it. He's so filled with joy. Good luck, New Yorkers, on that one. Now, let me shift to Erica Chenoweth. Again, I'm sure many of you have heard about this special, supposedly magic 3.5% of the population, which would be close to like 11 million people in the US, who supposedly, if we all mobilize at a protest, maybe that will cause regime change. This is what we're hearing. And I decided to dig into this. I've read Erica and her co-author's first book, or the key parts of the first half of this book. And I've read a recent piece that she wrote trying to make clear that this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of prescription. To be clear, they very methodically looked at the purpose of the book was actually to compare nonviolent civil resistance to armed resistance. And they show, by looking at instances between 1945 and 2000, it was 1945, and I think it was 2000, it was 70 years, 2015, or 2000, she wrote this in 2011, so like 2005. So between 1945 and I think 2005-ish, so maybe it was just 60 years, looking at a variety of, specifically, not all like we are protesting to get something small, but specifically regime change and territorial integrity type, really sort of big asks. And she's found out a lot about there are a lot of results that she noted in this book from 2011. It was a couple years later that she came up with the 3.5%. And the idea here can be best articulated, I think, in her own words with this very short TED Talk. It's only 12 minutes. It's worth your time. And then we'll do Crazy Town on the other side. Let me just do a screen share and play you Erica Chenoweth. TEDx Talk in Boulder. Here we go.
There are elections, but they're fake. The leader wins.
Okay, I'm going to start right here.
I'd like you to imagine that you live in a really repressive country. There are elections, but they're fake. The leader wins 100% of the vote each time. Security forces beat up opposition leaders with impunity, and they harass everyone else. This is a country where being in this room right now would get you on a list. Now let's say you've had enough, and so have many other people that you talk with in low whispers. Now, I'm not talking about the Hunger Games, although that would be awesome. Unfortunately, I'm talking about real-world conditions that many people face right now. So assuming you've decided to act, what would be the best way for you to challenge the system and create something new? My own answer to this question has changed over the past few years. In 2006, I was a PhD student here at CU Boulder studying political science, and my dissertation was on how and why people use violence to create political change in their countries. As for the scenario I just described, well, back then I bought into the idea that power flows from the barrel of a gun. And what I would have said was that although it was tragic, it was logical in such situations for people to use violence to seek their change. But then I was invited to an academic workshop put on by the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict. They were giving a week-long primer on nonviolent resistance to try to get people like me to teach about it in our classes. Now, my view of all of this at the time was that it was well-intentioned but dangerously naive. I mean, the readings they sent me in advance argued that the best way for people to seek really difficult political changes was through nonviolent or civil resistance. They described civil resistance as an active form of conflict where unarmed civilians would use tactics like protests, boycotts, demonstrations, and lots of other forms of mass non-cooperation to seek change. They brought up cases like Serbia, where a nonviolent revolution toppled Slobodan Milosevic, the butcher of the Balkans, in October of 2000, and the Philippines, where the People Power movement ousted Ferdinand Marcos in 1986. At the workshop, I said stuff like, well, those were probably exceptions. For every successful case you guys bring up, I can think of a failed case like Tiananmen Square. I can also think of plenty of cases where violence worked pretty well, like the Russian, French, and Algerian revolutions. Maybe nonviolent resistance works if you're seeking environmental reforms, gender rights, labor rights, but it can't work generally if you're trying to overthrow a dictator or become a new country. And it definitely can't work if the authoritarian leader you're facing is not incompetent, is somebody who's really brutal and ruthless. So by the end of the week, as you can imagine, I wasn't very popular. But my soon-to-be co-author, Maria Stephan, came up to me and said something like, if you're right, why don't you prove it? Are you curious enough to study this in a serious way empirically? Now, believe it or not, nobody had really done that before systematically. And although I was still skeptical, I was curious. I figured that if they were right and I was wrong, somebody better find out. So for the next 2 years, I collected data on all major nonviolent and violent campaigns for the overthrow of a government or territorial liberation since 1900. The data covered the entire world and consist of every known case where there were at least 1,000 observed participants. This is hundreds of cases. And then I analyzed the data, and the results blew me away. From 1900 to 2006, nonviolent campaigns worldwide were twice as likely to succeed outright as violent insurgencies. And there's more. This trend has been increasing over time, so that in the last 50 years, nonviolent campaigns are becoming increasingly successful and common, whereas violent insurgencies are becoming increasingly rare and unsuccessful. This is true even in those extremely brutal authoritarian conditions where I expected nonviolent resistance to fail. So why is civil resistance so much more effective than armed struggle? The answer seems to lie in people power itself. Researchers used to say that no government could survive if just 5% of its population rose up against it. Our data show that the number may be lower than that. No single campaigns failed during that time period after they'd achieved the active and sustained participation of just 3.5% of the population. And lots of them succeeded with far fewer than that. Now, 3.5% is nothing to sneeze at. In the US today, that's like 11 million people. But get this, every single campaign that surpassed that 3.5% was a nonviolent one. In fact, the nonviolent campaigns were on average 4 times larger than the average violent campaigns. And they were often much more inclusive and representative in terms of gender, age, race, political party, class, and the urban-rural distinction. Civil resistance allows people of all different levels of physical ability to participate. So this can include the elderly, people with disabilities, women, children, and anyone else who wants to. If you think about it, everyone is born with a natural physical ability to resist nonviolently. Anyone here who has kids knows how hard it is to pick up a child who doesn't want to move or to feed a child who doesn't want to eat. Violent resistance, on the other hand, is a little more physically demanding, and that makes it a little bit more exclusive. In my case, when I was in college, I was in military science classes because I planned to go through the ROTC program and become an Army officer. Now, I really liked the rappelling, the shooting at the range, the map reading, of course, and the uniforms. But I wasn't stoked when they asked me to get up in the wee hours of the morning and run until I vomited. So I quit and chose the far less demanding career of professor.
Totally
Not
relatable.
everybody wants to take the same chances in life, and many people won't turn up unless they expect safety in numbers. The visibility of many civil resistance tactics like protests allow them to draw these risk-averse people into the fray. Put yourself back in that repressive country for just a minute. Let's say your trusted friend and neighbor comes to you and says, I know you sympathize with our cause. We're going to have a mass demonstration down the street tonight at 8 o'clock. I hope to see you there. Now, I don't know about you all, but I am not the person who's going to show up at 7:55 and see what's up. I'm probably going to look outside my window at 8:30 and see what's going on. If I see 6 people congregated there in the square, I'm going to sit this one out. But if I see 6,000 and more coming down the alleyway, I just might join in. My point here is that the visibility of civil resistance actions allows them to attract more active and diverse participation from these ambivalent people. And once they become involved, it's almost guaranteed that the movement will then have links to security forces, civilian bureaucrats, economic and business elites, educational elites, state media, religious authorities, and the like. And those people start to reevaluate their own allegiances. No regime loyalists in any country live entirely isolated from the population itself. They have friends, they have family members, they have existing relationships that they have to live with in the long term, whether or not the leader stays or goes. In Serbia, when it became obvious that hundreds of thousands of Serbs were descending on Belgrade to demand that Milosevic leave office, police officers started to disobey the order to shoot on demonstrators. When one of them was asked why he did so, he said simply, I knew my kids would be in the crowd. Some of you are thinking, is this person insane? I watch the news and I see protesters getting shot at all the time. And it's true. Sometimes crackdowns do happen. But even in those cases, the nonviolent campaigns were outperforming the violent ones by 2 to 1. It turns out that when security forces beat up, arrest, or even shoot unarmed activists, there is indeed safety in numbers. Large, well-coordinated campaigns can shift between tactics that are concentrated, like protests or demonstrations, to tactics of dispersion, where people stay away from places they were expected to go. They do strikes, they bang on pots and pans, they stay at home, they shut off their electricity at a coordinated time of day. These tactics are much less risky. They're very hard, or at least very costly to suppress, but the movement stays just as disruptive. What happens in these countries once the dust settles? Well, it turns out that the way you resist matters in the long run too. Most strikingly, countries in which people wage nonviolent struggle were way more likely to emerge with democratic institutions than countries in which they wage violent struggle. And those countries with nonviolent campaigns were 15% less likely to relapse into civil war. The data are clear. When people rely on civil resistance, their size grows. And when large numbers of people remove their cooperation from an oppressive system, the odds are ever in their favor. So, I and many others like me had ignored the millions of people worldwide who were skillfully using
I think
civil
you all
resistance
got that Hunger
in favor
Games
of studying
reference.
just things that blow up. I was left with a few questions about the way I used to think. Why was it so easy and comfortable for me to think that violence works? And why did I find it acceptable to assume that violence happens almost automatically because of circumstances or by necessity, that it's the only way out of some situations? In a society that celebrates battlefield heroes on national holidays, I guess it was natural to grow up believing that violence and courage are one and the same, and that true victories cannot come without bloodshed on both sides. But the evidence I've presented here today suggests that for people serious about seeking change, there are realistic alternatives. Imagine what our world would look like now if we allowed ourselves to develop some faith in them. What if our history courses emphasized the decade of mass civil disobedience that came before the Declaration of Independence, rather than the war that came after? What if our social studies textbooks emphasized Gandhi and King in the first chapter, rather than that as an afterthought? And what if every child left elementary school knowing more about the suffragist movement than they did about the Battle of Bunker Hill? What if it became common knowledge that when protest becomes too dangerous, there are many nonviolent techniques of dispersion that might keep movements safe and active? Okay, so here we are, 2013 in Boulder, Colorado. Maybe some of you are thinking, that's great that civil resistance works, and what can I do? Encourage your children to learn more about the nonviolent legacies of the past 200 years and explore the potential of people power. Tell your elected representatives to stop perpetuating the misguided view that violence pays by supporting the first groups in a civil uprising who take up arms. Although civil resistance cannot be exported or imported, it's time for our officials to embrace a different way of thinking. That in both the short and longer term, civil resistance tends to leave behind societies in which people can live more freely and more peaceably together. Now that we know what we know about the power of nonviolent conflict, I see it as our shared responsibility to spread the word so that future generations don't fall for the myth that violence is their only way out. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, let me just hide that. So that was Erica Chenoweth talking about 3.5%. Yes, she went back, it turns out, to the 1900s. One of the charts in a recent publication was looking around, 1940 until around 2000-ish, 2005, right? And she's saying that she's discovered that if you have about 3.5% of a population seeking regime change, that will work. Not small changes. And I know she doesn't talk about this in this video, but she does in her recent papers for Harvard Kennedy School. Now, in 2013, we were not living in a repressive regime. We were not thinking that we needed to resort to these tactics at all. So what was she getting at? What she was getting at is the United States policy, where we have a tendency to fund, if there is a repressive regime, she's saying, who should we fund? The violent militia, against a repressive regime, or might we look to supporting those who engage in civil disobedience? That was what she was getting at. I don't think it crossed her mind that 12 years later, her work would be in the spotlight because we need it right now. Now, with that, I'm going to get you to Crazy Town. Crazy Town is the ride or die Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who, in the face of inflation, lies through his teeth. Let's watch this.
And American corporations are just going to swallow that and not pass that price increase on to consumers? What's your projection?
What's so interesting is that you're worried about the importers. How about the people who build and employ Americans
No, I'm
here?
asking about people who go to the store
People who make
to buy
cars here, people who manufacture here.
Okay, remember, this is basically, let me start at the beginning, basically about tariffs, right?
And American corporations are just going to swallow that and not pass that price increase on to consumers?
Guys, I am the worst. I didn't play the Crazy Town music. I can't listen to this. Let's go. Jazz hands. Okay, sorry about that. Just not thinking. I was so stoked by Kristen Chenoweth's piece. I mean, Erica Chenoweth's piece. I don't want to get her confused with the actor that I didn't play you Crazy Town. Let's play this.
And American corporations are just going to swallow that and not pass that price increase on to consumers? What's your projection?
What's so interesting is that you're worried about the importers. How about the people who build and employ Americans
No, I'm
here?
asking about people who go to the store to buy.
People who make cars here, people who manufacture here. They don't pay a tariff. They don't pay a tariff at all. So President Trump says it all the time. Build in America, you don't pay a tariff. The idea that these importers are more important than the people who employ Americans.
Remember, you can't build a banana in America. But continue, Howard.
I think it's just a wrong way of thinking about it. Americans deserve to be employed here and have the best jobs in the world, and that's what Donald Trump is trying to deliver.
I was asking about consumer prices, what people will pay when they go to the store. But since you don't want to answer,
I think they'll be low. I think they'll be low, shockingly low.
Okay, the consumer price index doesn't currently reflect that, though. The trend is towards higher.
Well, it just went up. Would it go up 0.1%? Look, the dollar has declined
0.2 on the core.
More than 10%, right?
0.2%. So he doesn't even have the numbers. He doesn't even care about the numbers. Okay, let's continue. I do like the host here on this show. I think this is, hold on one second. I'll tell you who it is. I think it's.
So the dollar declining sort of softens tariffs completely. These are small numbers. You're going to see inflation is not going to change.
Margaret Brennan, inflation is increasing. Prices are going up. But you do you, Howard Lutnick, the clown. And with that, I bid you adieu. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Thanks for being here. And one last thing, in 3 weeks from tomorrow, it will be the 1-year anniversary of my hosting on my own, Jen Taub Live, right here on my own YouTube station. So I've got some things planned for our anniversary together. More on that soon. Love you guys. Bye. Sorry. Wow, having a little trouble with the show.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Jen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Jen Taub Show. Do 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 do. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show. Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show. Well, welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we